What is going on, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of MGC. Let me just turn my air condition down. 30 degrees today in Nairobi, good old hot day. I wanted to take you guys through an important topic today. Is the 200 series V8 reliable? We're not talking about the 2UZ FE. I'm talking about the UR series of engines, which came about from about 2009 or 2010 and ran all the way to the last 200 series model in about 2021. So we want to see, is this engine actually unreliable, and does it have a head gasket issue? As I'm sure a lot of you have watched the Car Care Nut and his video on the head gasket issues that he's seeing in the US market, and I wanted to give you guys a bit of insight and my 2 cents on this and how you should look into this situation, what you should care about, and what you can do to mitigate these issues. So we're in Kenya. Here's my perspective. Let's get right into it. All right, so those of you, kind of new to Land Cruisers, I can take you through the different engines. Now, I know a lot of you, diesel guys out there. I know I don't cover the diesels, but I will get into a few of the diesels in future episodes. But this is pertaining to the petrol Land Cruisers, the petrol versions of Land Cruisers, which is predominantly the US market. Lots of petrols here in Kenya, Africa as well. And yeah, so getting through the engines, of course, the 2UZ FE, one of Toyota's most reliable V8 engines, featured in the 100 series from 1998 all the way up to 2007. Now that 2UZ FE got some updates for the early model 200 series, so 2008, 2009, 200 series, still getting the 2UZ FE, but now you're getting variable valve timing, and you do still have that timing belt, of course, so you have to replace the timing belt. But same engine, so super reliable, nothing really to worry about. Now you move from there, you get into the 2010 Land Cruiser 200 series, and you come into one of Toyota's first updates. One of Toyota's first updates to the engine regarding the facelifted 200 series. And so we got into the UR series of engines. Now, the JDM versions, basically the 200 series that we get here in Nairobi or here in Africa, well, Kenya, those are basically 1UR engines, right? 1UR. Now, 1UR FE engines, they basically are updated from the 2UZ FE, slightly different, and they use more aluminium. So you got to remember that the 2UZ FE actually had an iron block, right? The most strong, the most durable way to build an engine, an iron block. Well, updated versions, and because of weight saving, the new UR series engines actually have an aluminium block. Now, what does this mean to some of you who don't really understand iron, aluminium? What's the big deal, Masai Gaines? Well, guys, number one, iron is super durable. Number two, when overheated, iron is still quite durable, but aluminium is not, right? So those aluminium engines, the issues I see here is that if these engines are actually overheated, even for a short period of time, you could have a lot of issues because of the bending of the metal. And once that metal bends, cylinder resurfacing and everything that you can do, if your block is bent, you've got big problems, and you probably have to replace, major and more components. So that's one thing to note for you guys out there, is definitely there was that big change. I know a lot of people don't know about it, but yes, you're getting an aluminium block when you go to that UR series engine. Now, what other differences were there? Well, the UR series engines, the 1UR was a 4.6 liter V8, but you guys in the US, you get the 3UR. And in fact, in the US, it's good to know that they've always gotten a slightly different engine compared to the JDM specs. I don't know why, but Toyota kind of always feels like it has to kind of put more power in engines that go to the US market. And so even with the 2UZ FE, Toyota eventually updated it to 285 horsepower for the US market, but the JDM versions, they stayed at 235 horsepower. The 1UR is a 4.6 liter engine. The 3UR that you guys get in the USA is a 5.7 liter engine, and it was the same with the LX570 and the 200 series. The ones of the US were 5.7 liters, and everything else, and what we got, was 4.7 liter. Let's get right into this head gasket issue. Now, what do I think about this head gasket issue? Well, first of all, what is a head gasket? You know, a head gasket is basically like a metal lining that they put in between the engine, and that's, you know, gonna hold and make sure that coolant doesn't seep through it. Coolant can go through the holes, through the jackets that it's supposed to, and that head gasket keeps the engine sealed and tight. Now, what happens? How do you blow a head gasket? I'm sure a lot of you have heard about head gasket issues. Well, how do you blow a head gasket? Well, number one, and this ties right in to the unreliability of the UR series engine. Is it really unreliable? Well, let me tell you an example. When the 80 series Land Cruiser came out, we had the 1FZ FE engine, right? Petrol 4.5 liter. Now, initially, you guys have to remember that back in the 80s, 90s, Toyota did build a reputation for extreme reliability. And there are two sort of negatives that come with building such a great reputation for reliability. Number one, customers start to get so used to the fact that your cars are reliable that they start to negate preventative maintenance and normal maintenance that you should do on vehicles. And number two, again, customers believe your brand is renowned for reliability, so they use cheaper components, cheaper oils, cheaper coolant, because they feel it's a Toyota, it'll run anyways. Well, this is where the issues start. So the UR series engine, according to me, they don't really have a head gasket issue. What the issue here is the lack of maintenance on the coolant system. Now, I've heard a lot of Land Cruiser owners as well say these kind of things. You know, they say, oh, I've never touched the coolant in this vehicle, or you know, the level has just stayed for years. I've never touched my coolant. Guys, that's not a flex. That's not something to be super happy about. Remember, why do we put coolant in engines? Number one, back in the day we used to put water, right? Water does a good job as well, but we realized the big issue with water is that it was rusting out our engines, right? Rusting out our engines. So we moved from the water and we said, all right, let's develop this coolant mixture that's really gonna help us out with that rust. So we started getting all these coolants and long life coolants. Now, what some of these older Toyota engines, it was actually okay if you didn't change the coolant every like 30,000 miles or every, you know, 3-4 years, depending on how much mileage you cover. It was actually all right because they were built to kind of take the acidity of the coolant and all that. But here comes the bottom line. When you don't replace fluids, any fluid, whatever it is, oil, coolant, those fluids will break down and those fluids will give you issues. So it's almost like a mindset change from back in the day, where these days, even though you buy a Toyota, you should know that I have to do this maintenance even on fluids, because you know, the modern car is not built to just not be maintained, even if it's a Toyota. So the UR series engines, this head gasket issue all arises from the car care nut, because the car care nut has received a bunch of Land Cruiser 200s where he has had to dive into this head gasket issue. And I'm almost certain that this issue is, number one, because coolant was not replaced. Coolant was not replaced, so coolant became acidic, and that acidic coolant starts to eat into those small circles on the head gasket that are supposed to just allow the coolant to pass through. Now, we could say it's a bad design, or Toyota shouldn't have put these coolant holes so close or so small, and that's also true. But the truth of the matter is that this issue could be 100% mitigated with correct maintenance, in terms of just flushing your coolant and putting in fresh coolant every 20,000-30,000 miles or every 2 years. Totally negate your problem. So is it really a head gasket issue, or is it really a maintenance issue? Now, granted, I know we can say that the 2UZ FE didn't really have this issue, you know? The 2UZ FE didn't really have this issue, right? You could keep coolant there for a long period of time and you wouldn't get a head gasket issue. So, you know, there's arguments on both sides of the coin. I'm not saying that the UR series is more reliable than the 2UZ. Based on that point, we could say the 2UZ FE is the GOAT, greatest of all time. It is the best Toyota V8 engine. But the UR series engines, I can't say that they're unreliable, especially the 1UR. Now maybe the 5.7s with that extra displacement in the US and with very hot, humid conditions, maybe it's a bit tougher on the vehicles and the coolant systems, and so we can say that that contributes to it. But definitely, if you still flush your coolant and you have a 200 series with the UR series engines, you are almost certainly going to be okay and not have the issues. So a bit of my 2 cents on this issue, guys. I don't believe it's something that to shout about or something that's a really big concern, or something that would stop you from buying a Land Cruiser 200 series. Certainly not, guys. So UR series engines still very reliable and still fantastic. But yes, I do love the 2UZ FE, what I get here in this 100 series. I still find the smoothness of this engine better than the UR series. I still find the 2UZ as being the most silky smooth Toyota V8 engine. So that's just my 2 cents on the UR series. If you guys haven't watched the Car Care Nuts video, you can go ahead and watch that video. But good practice if you own a vehicle, especially a Land Cruiser, is coolant flushes and fluid flushes. You know, oil, hydraulic fluid if you own the models with the hydraulic AHC suspension, brake fluid flushes, power steering fluid flushes, ATF automatic transmission fluid flushes. These are the preventative maintenance and things you can do to make your Toyota last a very long time. And just don't be one of those owners who gets into one of these vehicles and then says, all right, I am in a Land Cruiser, I'm gonna do nothing now, I'm just gonna save money and just do my oil services. Sooner or later, one of those other systems will break down simply because of dirty, old, acidic fluid. So just my 2 cents there. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit like, subscribe, comment down below, and stay tuned for the next video where I look into the Prado 150 series. My review of that. Stay tuned. We get that next week. Hope you enjoyed this one, a quick one. I had to get this out, kind of talk about the UR series engines and just what I think about this whole topic. So they're not really unreliable. But anyways, 31 degrees, Nairobi. Good old hot day. Having a good time, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. It's been Masai Gaines checking out.